manifests throughout creation. Any individual who can understand these principles and adapt them to the three departments of nature becomes a true philosopher. From the right breast of Isis protruded a bunch of grapes, and from the left an ear of corn or a sheaf of wheat, golden in color. These indicate that nature is the source of nutrition for plant, animal, and human life, nourishing all things from herself. The golden color in the wheat corn indicates that in the sunlight or spiritual gold is concealed the first sperm of all life. On the girdle surrounding the upper part of the body of the statue appear a number of mysterious emblems. The girdle is joined together in front by 4 golden plates, the elements, placed in the form of a square. This signified that Isis, or nature, the first matter alchemical terminology, was the essence of the 4 elements: life, light, heat, and force, which quintessence generated all things. Numerous stars are represented on this girdle, thereby indicating their influence in darkness as well as the influence of the sun in light. Isis is the Virgin immortalized in the constellation of Virgo, where the World Mother is placed with a serpent under her feet and a crown of stars on her head. In her arms she carries a sheaf of grain and sometimes the young sun god. The statue of Isis was placed on a pedestal of dark stone ornamented with rams' heads. Her feet trod upon a number of venomous reptiles. This indicates that nature has power to free from acidity or saltness all corrosives and to overcome all impurities from terrestrial corruption adhering to bodies. The ram's heads indicate that the most auspicious time for the generation of life is during the period when the sun passes through the sign of Aries. The serpents under her feet indicate that nature is inclined to preserve life and to heal disease by expelling impurities and corruption. In this sense the axioms known to the ancient philosophers are verified. Namely, nature contains nature, nature rejoices in her own nature, nature surmounts nature. Nature cannot be amended but in her own nature. Paragraph continues. Therefore, in contemplating the statue of Isis, we must not lose sight of the occult sense of its allegories. Otherwise, the Virgin remains an inexplicable enigma. From a golden ring on her left arm a line descends, to the end of which is suspended a deep box filled with flaming coals and incense. Isis, or nature personified, carries with her the sacred fire, religiously preserved and kept burning in a special temple by the Vestal Virgins. This fire is the genuine, immortal flame of nature, ethereal, essential, the author of life. The inconsumable oil, the balsam of life, so much praised by the wise and so often referred to in the scriptures, is frequently symbolized as the fuel of this immortal flame. From the right arm of the figure also descends a thread, to the end of which is fastened a pair of scales, to denote the exactitude of nature in her weights and measures. Isis is often represented as a symbol of justice, because nature is eternally consistent. 2 inserts. From Lenore's Law, French Maconnery. Araris, or Thoth, one of the 5 immortals, protected the infant Horus from the wrath of Typhon after the murder of Osiris. He also revised the ancient Egyptian calendar by increasing the year from 360 days to 365. Thoth Hermes was called the dog-headed because of his faithfulness and integrity. He is shown crowned with a solar nimbus, carrying in one hand the crux ansata, the symbol of eternal life, and in the other a serpent wound staff symbolic of his dignity as counselor of the gods. From Lenore's Law, French Maconnery. Isis is shown with her son Horus in her arms. She is crowned with the lunar orb, ornamented with the horns of rams or bulls. Horus, or Horus as he is more generally known, was the son of Isis and Osiris. He was the god of time, hours, days, and this narrow span of life recognized as mortal existence. In all probability, the 4 sons of Horus represent the 4 kingdoms of nature. It was Horus who finally avenged the murder of his father, Osiris, by slaying Typhon, the spirit of evil. Continued. The World Virgin is sometimes shown standing between 2 great pillars, the Jachin and Boaz of Freemasonry, symbolizing the fact that nature attains productivity by means of polarity. As wisdom personified, Isis stands between the pillars of opposites, demonstrating that understanding is always found at the point of equilibrium and that truth is often crucified between the 2 thieves of apparent contradiction. The sheen of gold in her dark hair indicates that while she is lunar, Her power is due to the sun's rays, from which she secures her ruddy complexion. As the moon is robed in the reflected light of the sun, so Isis, like the Virgin of Revelation, is clothed in the glory of solar luminosity. Apuleius states that while he was sleeping he beheld the venerable goddess Isis rising out of the ocean. The ancients realized that the primary forms of life first came out of water, and modern science concurs in this view. H. G. Wells, in his Outline of History, describing primitive life on the Earth, states but though the ocean and intertidal water already swarmed with life, the land above the high tide line was still, so far as we can guess, a stony wilderness without a trace of life. In the next chapter he adds wherever the shoreline ran there was life, and that life went on in and by and with water as its home, its medium, and its fundamental necessity. The ancients believed that the universal sperm proceeded from warm vapor, humid but fiery. The veiled Isis, whose very coverings represent vapor, is symbolic of this humidity, which is the carrier or vehicle for the sperm life of the sun, represented by a child in her arms because the sun, moon, and stars in setting appear to sink into the sea, and also because the water receives their rays into itself. The sea was believed to be the breeding ground for the sperm of living things. This sperm is generated from the combination of the influences of the celestial bodies. Hence Isis is sometimes represented as pregnant. Frequently the statue of Isis was accompanied by the figure of a large black and white ox. The ox represents either Osiris as Taurus, the bull of the zodiac, or Apis, an animal sacred to Osiris because of its peculiar markings and colorings. Among the Egyptians, the bull was a beast of burden. Hence the presence of the animal was a reminder of the labors patiently performed by nature that all creatures may have life and health. Harpocrates, the god of silence, holding his fingers to his mouth, often accompanies the statue of Isis. He warns all to keep the secrets of the wise from those unfit to know them. The Druids of Britain and Gaul had a deep knowledge concerning the mysteries of Isis and worshipped her under the symbol of the moon. Godfrey Higgins considers it a mistake to regard Isis as synonymous with the moon. The moon was chosen for Isis because of its dominion over water. The Druids considered the sun to be the father and the moon the mother of all things. By means of these symbols they worshipped universal nature. The figure of Isis is sometimes used to represent the occult and magical arts, such as necromancy, invocation, sorcery, and thaumaturgy. In one of the myths concerning her, Isis is said to have conjured the invincible god of eternities, Ra, to tell her his secret and sacred name, which he did. This name is equivalent to the lost word of masonry. By means of this word, a magician can demand obedience from the invisible and superior deities. The priests of Isis became adepts in the use of the unseen forces of nature. They understood hypnotism, mesmerism, and similar practices long before the modern world dreamed of their existence. Plutarch describes the requisites of a follower of Isis in this manner: for us 'tis not the length of the beard, or the coarseness of the habit which makes a philosopher, so neither will those frequent shavings, or the mere wearing of a linen vestment constitute a votary of Isis. But he alone is a true servant or follower of this goddess, who after he has heard, and been made acquainted in a proper manner with the history of the actions of these gods, searches into the hidden truths which he concealed under them, and examines the whole by the dictates of reason and philosophy. During the Middle Ages the troubadours of Central Europe preserved in song the legends of this Egyptian goddess. They composed sonnets to the most beautiful woman in all the world. Though few ever discovered her identity, she was Sophia, the Virgin of Wisdom, whom all the philosophers of the world have wooed. Isis represents the mystery of motherhood, which the ancients recognized as the most apparent proof of nature's omniscient wisdom and God's overshadowing power. To the modern seeker she is the epitome of the great unknown, and only those who unveil her will be able to solve the mysteries of life, death, generation, and regeneration. Mummification of the Egyptian dead. Servius, commenting on Virgil's Aeneid, observes that the wise Egyptians took care to embalm their bodies, and deposit them in catacombs, in order that the soul might be preserved for a long time in connection with the body, and might not soon be alienated. While the Romans, with an opposite design, committed the remains of their dead to the funeral pile, intending that the vital spark might immediately be restored to the general element, or return to its pristine nature.